Hi everybody, welcome to Jewish Scroll. My name is Jared. I'm creating this new channel to learn everything that I can about Judaism. I am not Jewish, but I'm very interested in the religion. I have some other YouTube accounts where occasionally, as I do research, I learn things about Judaism. And I have enough of an interest to where I just want to create a separate channel. And I feel like the best way to learn something is to study it yourself and then teach it. And YouTube is a great place to do that. So I just want to start with this. I plan on covering Jewish doctrine. I also want to keep on top of news, whether it has to do with Israel or just anything taking place in Judaism. I want to keep track of what some Jews may consider signs of the times that Messiah is going to appear. But we'll just start with this. I was looking at Israel 365 News. This is an article written by my friend Adam Eliyahu Berkowitz. I've interviewed him on my other channel. The title of this is Knesset Restores Rabbinical Courts, echoing Isaiah, I will restore your judges as of old. So I saw this and I was like, this is a great way to start Jewish Scroll. This sounds significant. So what I want to do before we jump into this article is talk about the concept of Beit Din, okay? The Jewish court of law. We're looking at My Jewish Learning. It seems to me that this website is a really good resource to learn about Judaism. All right, it says, the Torah reminds us to appoint judges and officials for your tribes, from Deuteronomy 16, verse 18. And actually, I think it'd be a good idea to actually go to the Tanakh. If you're not Jewish, Tanakh is the Old Testament. And this is actually in the Torah, in the Tanakh. The Torah is the 5 books of Moses. And we're looking at Sepharia. This is another really good website for all things Jewish, different Jewish publications, like the Talmud and things like that. Okay, it says, you shall appoint magistrates and officials for your tribes in all the settlements that the Eternal, your God, is giving you, and they shall govern the people with due justice. Okay, so Beit Din. According to what I'm learning right now, it seems like this concept comes from this scripture, Deuteronomy 16:8, and I'm sure that there's other scriptures that talk about it. Continuing. Throughout history, Jews have observed this commandment by setting up various ways of adjudicating Jewish legal disputes. During the time of the Temple in Jerusalem, the Sanhedrin, a group of 71 rabbis, heard cases and handed down rulings to the Jews in Israel. Soon after the destruction of the temple, when Jews began spreading throughout the diaspora, gathering 71 legal authorities was no longer practical. Instead, consulting a Beit Din, sometimes spelled, and then it gives alternate spellings, a group of 3 men, knowledgeable in Jewish law, eventually became the commonly accepted way for Jews to address legal disputes. I should have highlighted that. A group of 3 men. So this is after the time of the Sanhedrin in the the Jewish diaspora. Group of 3 men knowledgeable in Jewish law eventually became the commonly accepted way for Jews to address legal disputes. These 3 men worked together to come to a ruling according to halakha, or Jewish law. During the time of the Sanhedrin, this option had only been available to those living in small towns. Okay, so we're going to go to my spreadsheet really quick. And you can access my spreadsheets anytime. The link is in the description box of each video. I have, among all these other spreadsheets, if you look at the bottom, I have one called Topics A through Z. So I have added, and this is going to get filled up as time goes on. I'm just at the very beginning of my channel. So I have Beit Din here. It's a Jewish court in In this cell, I put what we learned on my Jewish learning, and then we have this scripture. So if you ever want to refer to this again, it'll be here for you. I've added halakha, or Jewish law. All right, let's go back to this article. In Israel today, now this article, it's not dated, but I'm pretty sure it was written before the Israel 365 article that we're going to cover. So keep this in mind. It says, in Israel today, Beit Din are a part of the formal legal system and must be consulted for some ritual matters, such as divorces and conversions. Members of Israeli Beit Din are called dayanim, and many have been through rigorous training programs focused on settling disputes and making legal rulings. Outside of Israel, there are some national and local Beit Din, such as the Beit Din of America or the Beit Din of Manchester, that are available for those who want to employ their services. These Beit Din are typically staffed by rabbis, and those on the Beit Din of America are often also lawyers. However, according to Jewish law, all one needs for a Beit Din is 3 Jewish men. So technically, you can create your own without using one of the formal organizations. Often the proceedings of a Beit Din are held in a synagogue, but they can actually take place anywhere, even at home or at the park. Okay. Later on, there was something else I wanted to point out. So this section talks about Beit Dins according to the different movements in Judaism. I have a spreadsheet where I intend to kind of like sort out which movement believes what and how they're different one from another. I do realize that you have ultra-Orthodox, you have the Haredi, and you have the Hasidim. So I'll add those later. But for right now, I just have Orthodox, Conservative, and Reform because that's what's in this article. Okay, so it shows the different, I guess some of the key differences between these 3 movements in regards to the Beit Din. In the Orthodox community, a formal Beit Din is composed of 3 Jewish adult men, at least one of whom is a rabbi, and the others of whom are Torah and mitzvah, which is commandments, mitzvah observant Jews, preferably knowledgeable about the particular matter that is being argued. The vast majority of Beit Din are Orthodox. However, the conservative movement also convenes Beit Din primarily for the purposes of divorce and conversion. So I think that right there, that's an important difference, because it didn't say that for the Orthodox. So primarily for divorce and conversion. Whereas I guess an Orthodox Beit Din would cover much more than just that, I believe. Continuing, there are women who sit on these Beit Din, but they sometimes recuse themselves from a Beit Din out of concern that if the divorce or conversion would ever be contested by an Orthodox Beit Din, it could be overturned because a woman was on the Beit Din. So something that I've learned before this point is, even though the conservative movement has the word conservative in it, like I'm in the United States, and we typically think of conservative as it refers to social issues and politics, but that's not how it's used here. Conservative Jews, it seems like most of them tend to be more liberal in like American politics. And then even more liberal than them, it seems, is the Reform movement, which in yellow it says, in the Reform movement, Beit Din are only convened for conversions. So it seems like Beit Dins or Beit Din in the Reform movement does even less. So it's like the Orthodox, it does a lot. I suppose it touches on all aspects of Jewish law. Whereas the conservative, it's more reduced. And then with the Reform movement, it's just for conversions. And then it says, women are accepted on these Beit Din. So I put these differences here on this spreadsheet called movements. My reference is here. We're getting this from My Jewish Learning. And as I learn more, we'll add more references and more facts on this spreadsheet. Okay, don't worry. We're getting to this in just a minute. We're going to see the news that's taking place in Israel, but I think it's important for us to understand Beit Din. There's one other place that I want to go. There's a really useful website called the People's Talmud. And on my other channel, I came across this because Israel 365 set me up with Rabbi Gedalia Gerfein. He lives in West Jerusalem in Israel. And he put together this really large body of work where he kind of breaks down the Talmud and helps it to be a little bit more understandable for people that are not Jewish, or if you are Jewish and maybe you're coming back to, your religious life, maybe you've stepped away, or if you've never really been a practicing Jew. So we're going to go, and what you do, go over here to the right where it says home, click on this. And what I did is I clicked on search, and then I just typed in Beit Din. But you have all these different categories right here that you can look at. Okay, so this was the only entry that popped up for Beit Din. Let me zoom in. This comes from the Talmud, or he's talking about this part of the Talmud, Yevamot 47a. Once you're a Jew, you're always a Jew. Tosafot point out that a non-Jew who wishes to convert to Judaism must do so before a qualified Beit Din, or Jewish court. One reason is out of concern for the non-Jew, meaning if a non-Jew has a kosher conversion, they become a Jew and it can never be undone. Now, that's my first time learning that. So if you convert, you are a Jew forever. Continuing, there is no way to retroactively invalidate the conversion. The Talmud highlights, the Talmud highlights that a convert who abandons the way of Judaism is still a Jew nonetheless and will be judged in heaven as a Jew. And since there is no need for any non-Jew to become Jewish, as all people can find their way to heaven, why would such a person jeopardize their eternity by becoming a Jew and facing the consequences if they leave the faith when they could have just remained as God created them? Yeah, in Judaism, it's not necessary to become Jewish, like it just said. In fact, if you decide to become Jewish, from a Jewish point of view, you're taking upon yourself a lot of commandments, or mitzvot, that you're expected to keep and observe. And so you're taking on a really big responsibility, and there can be really heavy consequences for not observing the mitzvot. We're going to go to Sepharia. We're looking at the Babylonian Talmud under Yevamot 47a that we just read on the People's Talmud. I wanted to point out a couple things here. I know this is a really roundabout way to get to the article that we were starting off with, but I think it's important to look at some of these things. Okay, let me close that. Zoom in. The sages taught in a Baraita, with regard to a potential convert who comes to a court in order to convert at the present time when the Jews are in exile, the judges of the court say to him, "What did you see that motivated you to convert? Don't you know that the Jewish people at the present time are anguished, suppressed, despised, and harassed, and hardships are frequently visited upon them?" If he says, "I know, and although I am unworthy of joining the Jewish people and sharing in their sorrow, I nevertheless desire to do so," then the court accepts him immediately, to begin the conversion process. And the judges of the court inform him of some of the lenient mitzvot and some of the stringent mitzvot. And they inform him of the sin of neglecting the mitzvah. Mitzvot is plural, mitzvah is singular, commandments. The sin of neglecting the commandment to allow the poor to take gleanings, forgotten sheaves, and produce in the corner of one's field, and about the poor man's tithe. And they inform him of the punishment for transgressing the mitzvot as follows. They say to him, "Be aware that before you came to this status and converted, had you eaten forbidden fat, you would not have been punished by Karet." Now, really quick, I'm sorry. Karet is another word that I've added to my spreadsheet called Topics A through Z. We're looking at my Jewish learning. Just really quick. Karet, or I guess it's supposed to be pronounced Karet, also known as excision, is a biblical punishment imposed for a number of offenses, including sexual immorality, eating leavened products on Passover, performing work on the Sabbath, and failing to circumcise males. The word itself comes from the root meaning cut off, but the particulars of what this punishment entails are not specified in the Torah and are subject to debate. Later on, it says, the Torah's repeated mentions of being cut off from the community implies a kind of social ostracism, but much rabbinic commentary suggests that karet literally meant death. In his commentary on Leviticus 17:9, which states that anyone who offers a sacrifice and does not bring it to the tent of meeting for God shall be cut off, Rashi says this means both his days will be shortened and his offspring shall die off. Similar notions are found in the Talmud. According to a passage in Moed Katan 28a, death prior to the age of 60 was understood to be a result of Karet. One sage, in fact, made a party on his 60th birthday to celebrate the fact that he had escaped death from Karet. The implication of these and other sources are that Karet is a punishment meted out by God, not by the rabbis or the wider community. But other authorities understand Karet as more akin to spiritual death. Okay, so now we know what Karet means. We're going back to the Talmud, and you have these judges talking to a potential convert, and they're just giving him a warning, him or her a warning. They say to him, "Be aware that before you came to this status and converted, had you eaten forbidden fat, you would not have been punished by Karet. And had you profaned Shabbat, you would not have been punished by stoning." Now, I think I was familiar with this, that you would be put to death for not observing Shabbat. In fact, I think I heard that from Rabbi Gerfein. But I went ahead and made note of that on topics A through Z under Shabbat, so I can remember that for later. But now, once converted, if you have eaten forbidden fat, you are punished by Karet. And if you have profaned Shabbat, you're punished by stoning. So let's just make sure you really want to do this. And just as they inform him about the punishment for transgressing the mitzvot, so too they inform him about the reward granted for fulfilling them. They say to him, "Be aware that the world to come is made only for the righteous, and if you observe the mitzvot, you will merit it. And be aware that the Jewish people at the present time are unable to receive their full reward in this world." Okay. All right. So I think we're good here. We read that. Okay, let's go. Now that we understand all of that, let's go to this Israel 365 article. Knesset restores rabbinical courts, echoing Isaiah. I will restore your judges as of old. This article is dated March 26th. Let me zoom in. The Knesset passed a law on Tuesday morning restoring to rabbinical courts a power they had exercised for decades before it was stripped away by a judicial ruling 20 years ago. By a vote of 65 to 41, lawmakers approved legislation allowing state rabbinical and Sharia courts to arbitrate civil disputes. Now, it's interesting because Sharia courts, I'm pretty sure that's exclusive to Islam. You know, you have Sharia law. If I'm not mistaken, that's Islam. So, okay. Lawmakers approved legislation allowing state rabbinical and Sharia courts to arbitrate civil disputes. A move supporters describe as a return to tradition, and critics warn could reshape the balance between religion and state. The law advanced by United Torah Judaism and Shas grants religious courts authority to adjudicate financial disputes when both parties give explicit and recent consent. Until 2006, rabbinical courts regularly handled such arbitration, a practice halted by a court decision that removed their standing in civil matters. Under the new law, their jurisdiction remains limited. They cannot hear criminal or administrative cases, matters involving the state, or disputes tied to marriage and divorce. And, that's one that both the Orthodox and the conservative Jews use Beit Dins for, not so much reform. Anyway, sorry. Labor disputes are also excluded unless initiated freely by the employee. Rabbinical courts are already embedded in Israel's judiciary, overseeing areas such as divorce. Oh, so it does include. So this is disputes tied to marriage and divorce. Okay, well, I guess some aspects of divorce, maybe. So overseeing areas such as divorce, inheritance, and conversion. The system includes 12 regional courts, with the Great Rabbinical Court in Jerusalem serving as the highest authority. It is currently headed by Sephardi Chief Rabbi David Yosef. And I've seen him before in social media posts. This is him right here, David Yosef. He is Sephardi. We'll do videos about the difference between Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardi. M.K. Moshe Gafni, one of the bill's sponsors, tied the moment to a broader religious vision. Quote, "We are now at the stage of, I will restore your judges as of old," he said, invoking the verse, "And I will restore your judges as at first, and your counselors as at the beginning. Afterward, you shall be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city," from Isaiah chapter 1, verse 26. Jewish law, or halakha, prohibits restoring non-Torah-based legal systems. Outside of Israel, rabbinic injunction resorts to a workaround called Dina D'Malkuta Dina. The law of the land is the law, which permitted Jews living under foreign sovereign rule to engage with Gentile legal systems. In the land of Israel, the halakhic leniency that permits the use of non-Torah-based courts is considerably stricter than in the diaspora. The principle of Dina D'Malkuta Dina does not apply in Israel, according to the majority of halakhic authorities. This is because the doctrine was conceived specifically to address Jewish life under non-Jewish governance. In a Jewish state, no such dispensation exists. The prohibition of arkaot, bringing disputes before secular tribunals, therefore stands in full force. Rooted in the Talmud's reading of Mishpatim, Exodus 21, verse 1, and codified by Maimonides, The prohibition means that a Jew who takes a fellow Jew to Israel's secular civil courts violates Torah law, desecrates God's name, Kilul Hashem, and bypasses the divine ordained system of Mishpat Ivri, Hebrew law administered through Beit Din, or rabbinical courts. Okay, so you see why this is important. If you have like a civil matter, a civil dispute, now you can go to a Beit Din and you don't have to worry about violating Torah law. Because, I mean, again, you can do this outside of Israel because you're under a foreign power, so you can use that country's legal system. But it's different in Israel because the Jews are in power, and so you're supposed to go to a Beit Din if you're a Jew in Israel, according to this. Oh yeah, there's a little bit more. We're going to end with this. So Rabbi Glick saw the Knesset law as returning the role of the Beit Din to its biblically intended role. Quote, "It's a very wonderful development because until now, the religious Beit Din was perceived as a place where you get married or divorced, but not really a true Beit Din that was involved in the jury system. Now they can make decisions influencing everyday life, including arguments between people. That's really what a Beit Din is all about. That's what the Torah and Peshat Mishpatim talk about when neighbors have disagreements. That's what the Beit Din is for. Until now, you always had to go to the Israeli court, which is based on the Turkish and British systems, but you couldn't go to a Beit Din that's based on Torah. That was also a source of indictment against Torah laws, as if following the Torah laws is somehow primitive and something that is not reasonable. Now, Israeli law recognizes the fact that the Jewish Torah, the Beit Din, has the authority to make decisions. And I think that's very, very wonderful. And I hope more and more people will use it and will see that the Beit Din searches for justice. When standing before judges today, they'll tell you that they're not looking for truth or justice. What? They're looking for legality. We're looking for whatever our legal system decides. With a Beit Din, we're looking for true justice. I'm sure that more and more people are going to want to follow Torah law because it really is law, Rabbi Glick concluded. All right, so that's the news. Beit Dins in Israel have regained a power that was lost 20 years ago. And I don't know, I suppose that this is a really good thing for religious Jews in Israel. I know that if I was Jewish, I'd probably be really happy about this. And in this video, we've gone ahead and looked at our first entries on my movements spreadsheet for Orthodox Conservative Reform. Later on, I'm sure I'll add Ultra Orthodox and in all the other types that there are, the different movements. And then we've covered Beit Din, so it's a Jewish court, Halakha, Jewish law, Karet, the essentially punishment from God when you break certain commandments or don't keep certain mitzvot, it's being cut off. And then we learned that if you're Jewish and you don't observe Shabbat, the punishment is stoning. If I'm understanding this right. If I'm getting something wrong, I'll correct it in future videos. But anyway, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.